Hello and welcome back. If you follow the channel, you may have seen the previous videos I did on these Singer Featherweight 221K sewing machines, where the machine that you can see on the right there was converted at some stage in its life, converted to a jigsaw or like a little table saw. And in the first video I showed, assessing the machine. They've got a donor machine here on the left, and assessing whether the donor machine had all the appropriate parts to go and replace the parts that have been taken out or modified in the machine on the right here, the table saw machine. And in the second video I showed removing the parts here. As you can see, I've got the parts laid out from the left-hand machine, the donor machine here. So today's video is going to cover putting all the parts back into the machine that have been converted to a table saw, and hopefully get the little beauty back up and running again. So that's the plan for today. We need to install these feed rods here, these two here, and then we've got the feed driving con rods, if you like, to install. We've got the lower shaft here to install, a lower shaft bearing, some linkages, and the reversing lever there. And over this side we've got a press foot bar here and here, these two parts here, and a needle bar. These parts here are from the two needle bars from both machines. I'm just going to choose the better one out of the two. Feed dog here, throat plate. So let's grab the tools and get started. So I don't really need the donor machine there. That's just you can see there that all the parts have been stripped out, the parts that we need there. So I'll put that aside. Okay, I'll start by I have to take this lever and plate out here. And if you've seen the previous video on this, in the series here, you'll see that I need to do this to angle down a little slider inside here, and that that's to allow me to get this linkage up in there. So get this one out first. Got it. I can actually undo that there. We have a close look in there. We can see the slider there. That's the slider that this roller here's got to go into. So that's the first thing to do. So push that down so that I can slide the little roller up into it. Let's get some oil onto it first. And then be able to slide that up into there. It's probably going to be quite difficult to get on camera exactly what I'm doing here, but I'm lining this fork here up with the cam on the top shaft and sliding this up through the little slider there. I'm just going to loosen this here because I think the bottom of this crank might be just catching on this little bar here. So if I can get that past. There we go. If I take this hand wheel off, I should be able to get to it. Spin that belt off. And yeah, this is the part that I'm trying to get back up again. It's a bit stiff. I'll get my screwdriver onto here, just gently turn that up there. There's the top end of the fork there on its cam lobe there. Give that some oil, and that's that one done. And we could probably put the lower linkage in there. Now, before installing these rods here, I like to make sure that these little locator bearings here are freed up. So quite a good idea just to remove them. Just make sure that the grub screw here that holds these bearings in is backed off far enough to allow the bearing to slide out. It's got a little flat spot here, so you need to back the grub screw off, you know, a little bit further just to allow the bearing to slide out, and then, you know, give it a clean up, a little bit of oil, like that, and just reinstall. Just make sure that they slide nicely in the holes there. It just makes it easier for adjusting. Okay, and then this one here. Sometimes they might be a bit difficult to get out. In which case I would probably just lubricate as much as you can of the surface that's protruding there, and just work that like that there. We've got these two here, one there, and this one here. Just a bit of oil either side, and that just helps to keep those freed up. Just make sure when you put them back in that the flat surfaces are going, you know, facing towards the grub screw there. So once that's done, we can position this here in place, and this is the part that holds the feed dog, just on here like this. And then, so this needs to be positioned laterally so that the feed dog lines up in the throat plate hole correctly without sort of rubbing on either side of the holes there. But at this stage I'll just get this in far enough you know, to allow further assembly, just leaving it loose so that I can adjust it later. Just making sure here that this bar here heads down into this hole here, just there, like that, and then push these out of the way, and of course that linkage here will come up and bolt into here. Just roughly get that in place there, just like that. And then we can do some positioning a little bit later on once we figure out where it needs to go exactly. So you can see that these are two different size crank ends here. So one's wider than the other. So you can see there that, you know, that one's this little linkage here, that's too wide, that surface there, and that one matches perfectly. So this matches this here, like so. So we know that this is the correct bolt, if you like, for this. So now let's feed that in. There we go. It's in there. Give that some oil there. And actually, whilst we've got these bearings here loose, I should probably grease them. I mean, even before you put the linkages on, you could grease these bearings here. So just get that, just a little bit of grease on these ends here. And you can see there that we can reposition this once I put the feed dog and the throat plate in place there. I can use that to position that correctly. That's ready to install there. Yeah, that's a 3/8 inch. Actually, I'll tighten that up once we get this here out. In fact, I removed that in the last one to allow easy removal of the main shaft here. It's just a matter of undoing this screw here, and we can just remove that. If we have a look here, the red and the black, they are the two wires to the motor, and the red and the yellow are the two wires to the bulb effectively, but the bulb first goes through the switch here, so just bear that in mind. But if I take that off here, we should be able to get better access into this here. Okay, so that's red for the motor and red heading to the switch up in here. And then we've got black here, which is the other connection for the motor. That one there. And then yellow is the other side of the bulb. Got a little washer there. Right, so, intact socket there. Quite handy. Sometimes they get damaged and broken. And that should allow easy access to the shafts and bits and pieces that we need to get to here. So now I can get a screwdriver on this here and tighten that up. That there. And actually, while I'm here, I might just look into getting the bearing, this bearing installed here. Okay, so we've got an oil hole here and a flat surface. So we've got the mount screw here, goes onto the flat surface, and the oil holes at the top. So you can see that that needs to be flipped around. And then we should be able to just drive that in there. Now that does need to be positioned laterally, just so that the little counterbalance wheel, this little counterbalance here, butts up against it, and also a little bit of leeway between the hook and the end of this. So the hook goes on the shaft here, so just allow a little bit of leeway here for a little bit of adjustment in case you know, you need a little bit of adjustment on the hook there, just to allow accommodating, you know, if the machine was going to be used with heavier needles, for instance, you'd want to just allow a little bit more clearance there between the needle and the hook. So let's just push that through. That should just push through there. Okay, just a bit further. And then once I get closer to installing the other bits and pieces on the bottom shaft there, I'll adjust this appropriately there. So, bottom shaft, we've got here, we've got a flat on this end, that's for the hook there, and then we've got a flat here, that's for the little counterbalance weight here. So we can go ahead and install the shaft So I'll just get some oil along here, and we'll just start by feeding it through from this end here. I think you could probably go through from either end. Let's just see here how we go. Yep. And then we've got, you'll notice that there are two screws here, two grub screws, and neither of them go onto any flat on this here. So this will be where the timing is set. You can actually see the little marks there. You might be able to see the little marks where the grub screws have tightened up on the shaft there. So we'll put the position the gear in there. Let's get that, and then the counterbalance goes on there. So we're set to put the hook on here, but first of all I'm just going to leave all that loose at the moment. You've probably seen this. It's been hit with overspray, so when someone's tried to pretty up the other machine, the part stoner machine that I had, they've actually oversprayed the hook here with black spray paint. So I'd like to clean that off. I'm going to try maybe Terps or something to see whether that, actually that's just going to scrape off. Look at that. Two grub screws there. I'm really only taking those out so that I can get this little backing plate off here. One there. We can get that. Oh, that's tight. And I'm not too keen on stabbing my fingers. See if I can get a better purchase on it from here. Yep, that's got it. You wonder whether a little bit of wire wool or something might take that overspray off. We'll have a look at that in a second. And then to get the, this is called the base, this part here. And we've got the hook itself here. And then we've got a little retaining plate here. Yeah, that's really tight. You definitely want to make sure you've got very good quality screwdrivers before attempting some of this, because if you don't have a good quality screwdriver, you can actually end up damaging the head of the screw to the point where you'd never get it undone again. So you kind of want to get it in one attempt, you know, if you can. Less risk of damaging the screw head. Now that should just pull out like that. So that's sometimes referred to as the hook gib, or gib I think it is. And then the base can come out, but you have to position it in a way that you'll see there's a little cutout here on the base, just where the tip of my thumb is there. That's a little cutout you can see there, and that has to line up with this area up here, and then you can pull the back of it out like that. You might be able to see the little cutout here. So you want to position the cutout in this area here, and that allows you to lift the back end up this end here, up, out. And this little channel here, in here, that this surface here rotates in here, and also the channel is sort of extended by this, the gib here. That's called the hook race, this little channel down in here, the hook race. Okay, and that's as far apart as we can get all the components here. Now let's just try maybe just some wire wool or something. I don't want to use anything too rough there, so just grab some wire wool. All I could really find is this Stilo, but it's not ideal because it's got you know, it's got that soapy stuff in it. Ugh. Yeah, that's coming off. So yep, that's working there. So I'll work away on just removing this paint here, and I'll come back when that's finished off there. Okay, I think these bits came up quite well actually, and they polished up quite nicely. I didn't get too fussy on, you know, lots of these areas here. I'm not going to get too carried away with it. But the working parts came up very, very nicely there. So I'll go ahead and put this back together. So we just line the slot up here with this piece here. It just sits in nicely there. While you're there, it's quite a good idea to clean these channels out as well. These little channels here. The purpose of these little channels here is if there's a thread jam and there's a whole lot of thread caught in here, the thread will drop down into these channels, and they're quite a acute angle here and quite sharp. So as the hook rotates around, they sort of act like a scissor almost, and they'll just cut the thread and clear the thread there. So you can see there's 3 pairs of channels there. And so let's put the gib back on. Just loosely tighten that at this stage until we get this screw here in, and then we can tighten both of those. Made in the USA. Singer USA. Can't go wrong. The best of quality. 1951. Just get that tight there. Try not to stab my finger. Can't tell you how many times I've done that. Okay, and then we put the little backing plate here. This is actually a needle guard, so it goes on so that the hook this hook point comes around and picks up the thread off the needle, and the needle is actually sandwiched between these two parts here, and this part here you can actually see a little bit of wear here, and that's just where the needle comes down. So if there's any needle deflection, this guard kind of pulls it back into line, if you know what I mean, and you know, it stops any sort of you know, too much deflection there. A little split screwdriver here, quite handy. Just gripping onto the screws. If you've not seen one of these before, it's a little screwdriver. As you pull this little shaft down here, it brings these two blades together. But not only that, if you look end on, it actually separates them out so they grip against the sides of the screw slot. Very handy. One of the first tools that I got along with my other screwdrivers and bits and pieces when I did my apprenticeship. So this little screwdriver's been with me since about 1987. And of course, you know, very good quality, quick, can't quite read the end, quick wed, Salt Lake City, USA. Again, you know, made to last, very high quality steel. Now that's just, there we go. It's not designed for tightening screws, just for getting them started, and then you can there we go. So that's all set to put on the shaft there now. Nicely cleaned up. I'll leave this until just a little bit later. Might as well get the other feed shaft here positioned. First of all, I need to put this crank back in here. So from memory, the Simanco USA and the part number here, stamped on here, went towards the arm of the machine. So I'll try and keep that orientation. Also want to try and keep the orientation of this cap here. I should probably mark it just as a precaution. I want to try and keep those parts matched. Okay, feed that up there, and then flip the machine over, and we can see just there like that. Try and do this whilst holding the machine up so you can see it, and then what we can do is try and place the cap on with the screws in place, just to make it easier to do this one-handed, like that. And then I'll just start it with my little screwdriver here. Yeah, the screwdriver's magnetic. Sometimes it's not that handy. It's good for some things, but not. Sorry, the focus is. There we go. Just get those started there. I want to do them up fairly evenly. 1, 2 there. So we've got that set there. That seems a little bit tight. Why is that? Yeah, that actually seems quite tight. I'm just hoping that these cranks here aren't matched to a specific machine, but that feels quite tight. I'll just back those screws off a little bit there. Yeah, they're tight. Still tight. Actually, I don't think it is the crank that's causing the tightness. I'm wondering if it's this, the gear here. And there might just be a little bit too much, or there might just not be enough clearance. The smaller gear here might be being pushed up against the larger gear here too tightly, just because maybe this bearing here is just protruding a little bit too far. That's my thought. So I'm just going to take this shaft out and see if this frees up. And yes, it does. So yeah, that's tight again. This is tight. Yeah, so this is tightening up on the shaft when I do the two mounting screws up. I think what I'll do is I will go ahead and put the linkage on the bottom first of all, and stop this from sort of rattling around here. Okay, and then the linkage bolt here goes through there. And there's a certain amount of adjustment here as well, so in fact I probably shouldn't tighten these up right now because they need to be adjusted, so I'll loosen this one here because they are eccentric. I always get confused as to if you're talking about an eccentric person. Eccentric, are they eccentric or eccentric? Eccentric, I think, is if you're talking about a person who's eccentric. So I'm figuring eccentric screws. Anyway, I should look that up one day. Now just get this other linkage, this little linkage here goes in down under here. Let's get a bit of oil on that while I'm there. Roughly there. I'll just tighten these here provisionally there. Oh yeah, so I've probably got this stitch length too long here. Just going to pull this up. There we go. Oh, that's all this floating around in here. That's all this rattling is all this here floating around in here. I wonder if I should just put the needle bar in to stop that from happening. I'm really just trying to get the machine to a point where I can turn it and, you know, identify any tight spots or anything like that. That way. Yeah. And then, so that's needle bar. So if I put that right up there, and it's, so I'm just, again, I'm going to provisionally tighten that there, just so that we've got, you know, everything working as it should. Let's get a little bit of oil. So really just looking for, you know, any tight spots or anything like that. We don't have to worry too much about the foot bar at this stage because it's not really an active moving part as such. Okay, that's good. Yeah, everything feels pretty good there. But I've still got this loose here. Let's see how we go. Just tighten those evenly. Now that's just quite loose. Yeah, so it's sort of bound up. So I think that there needs to be a little bit of clearance made here. I wonder if these were matched, these cranks were matched to the shafts. If anyone knows, if they ever, you know, worked in the Singer factory, I'd really like to know. But I think I need to get some shims just to provide a little bit of clearance there, because that is locking tight there, really tight. And I have to undo these screws probably a quarter turn each to get to the point where it's freed up, and of course you can't run the machine with loose screws like that, so shims are probably the answer there. Yeah, so that's effectively, you know, going to put the brakes on this assembly at this stage. I need to get some shims just to space this little crank out enough to stop it from binding on the shaft there. So I think I'll end this video here. We'll call this part 1 of the assembly and repair video, and I'll come back in part 2 once I get the shims organised for this. I don't have any shim material in stock that I can use to sort that out straight away. So keep an eye out for part 2, where I'll go ahead and we'll show you the shims here, and we'll go ahead and assemble the machine and test it. So yep, that's about it for this one. And as always, thank you very much to my patrons on Patreon, and thank you very much for watching.